that on. I'd like to call this meeting of the Fargo School Board to order. Welcome and good evening, all. I would entertain a motion regarding the approval of the agenda. Robin?
I move approval of the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. Does anyone have any correspondence? Okay, good. Me neither. Now the best part of the evening, our guest performers. I will hand it over to Dr. Schatz to give us a little bit of an introduction.
It's my pleasure tonight to invite our guests here to perform for us. Denise Odegaard is here representing our music programs, and so I'm going to have Denise introduce John and the students, and then we'll have a performance. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thanks for letting us do this every March. We perform for you because it's Music in Our Schools Month. And so we like to celebrate a little bit, and we also like to thank you. So I heard somebody say they looked in their little card here from us, so make sure you check that out.
Oh, my.
But probably don't rustle your wrappers during the meeting. We have special guests here tonight, and I just wanted to tell you our new performing arts standards are coming out in June, and there's 3 strands: performing, creating, and responding. So you're going to hear 2 of the strands tonight, and I'm going to have John explain that in a minute. John Severson teaches at South High, and one of his duties is to teach a composition class, which actually started with the class I was in high school as an after-school theory and composition program. So 40 some years later, we can witness that this program has lasted and is still going strong, and it's a great part of our school system. So we want to welcome John Severson and his string quartet.
Thank you. What you're going to hear tonight, you guys, is this class teaches kids some of the fundamentals in music composition, how music is put together. And it's interesting when you see the artwork that's hanging on the walls here. You can see age-appropriate artwork, but what's interesting about music composition is that for the most part, we only consume music done by professionals. You never go out and go to a concert of the music that Beethoven threw away. You only hear the stuff the best when we buy music. And so what happens is that kids sometimes get the idea that they can't compose music because what they write isn't at the standard. They don't see the progression to go through. So this class, which as Denise said has been in 40 years in the program, I've had the pleasure and opportunity of teaching it for 37, takes and fills in those gaps for the kids. So we sort of move them through the, you might say, elementary, middle school, high school, and beyond in how to get music to make sense. And that's what this is really all about. So what you're going to hear tonight is a quartet, a string quartet that was written by a junior last year, and he's not in the program this year. He moved out of the district. But I thought this is a good representation of the capability of students when given the right tools and the opportunity, which is really what this class is about. And thank you for supporting this very unique opportunity for these kids. This is what they're capable of producing. So with that said, I will let them take it.
Excuse me. Wow. Thank you very much, not only for taking the time to come and play for us, but also John for bringing them and for teaching kids who can write that kind of music and then perform it. I was lucky enough to have both my boys as students of Mr. Severson, so I know how lucky all of you are. Could you introduce yourselves so that we know who you are?
I'm Carl Benson. I'm a junior at North.
I'm Katie Knutsvig. I'm a sophomore at Davies.
I'm Megan Lorenz, and I'm also a sophomore at Davies.
I'm Mason Tacky, and a sophomore at North.
Wow, thank you. Didn't realize it was a joint group either, so even nicer. So thank you very much, and Linda has a word.
I'd just like to,
Microphone.
oh, it's on.
Okay.
Just like to express my appreciation for this kind of teaching in our schools. I mean, we all know that I didn't have the opportunity to write a piece of music until I got to college. And so few high schools have programs like this, and it's really, really special. So just kudos to you, and for the sensitive ensemble playing, very nice. So, great.
Maybe you'll come back and play for us again. Thank you so much. Anybody else have? Thank you. Thank you. Oh, and thank you for our treats. I'm sure we'll get some good inspiration from the music that you left us. The next item on our agenda is recognition of the audience, and no one had signed up, and I don't see anyone sitting there who might not know the protocol and want to address the audience. So we are at staff reports, and David Marcourt had a unexpected something come up at the last minute, so he's not with us tonight, so that we will not have an FEA report. So we will move on to the HVAC cost summary report, and that is courtesy of Brock, who is handing something out to us. Thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, as I had promised you at the last board meeting, we would put together a summary of total costs of the HVAC project. As you know, we bid all of these projects out as individual projects, but we view them really as one major project that's happening just in 6 individual buildings. And so what you'll see in front of you is a total cost approved to date for all of these projects. We have the individual buildings listed across the top. We have those contracts. Then we just have a total of a bid award that was approved by the board. Then as you follow that down, we'll just look at Madison, and they all follow the same. You've got the total bid award approved. Then we've got the design fee and construction administration fee that's on there to give you a subtotal. Then we also have a construction contingency. We have built in a 5% contingency on these jobs. You've heard us talk about contingencies in the 3 to 5% area, and understand that built in a 5% contingency predominantly because of the age of these buildings, the number of locations we're in, and just to make sure that there's nothing unforeseen. We really feel like we've gone through these with a fine-tooth comb. We don't know that there will be unexpected costs, but you just never know when you get into those buildings. Have those dollars in there. If we don't spend them, obviously, project. We then have the asbestos abatement, again, something that has been approved by the board for each individual building. And then a grand total on the bottom of each building, and then the far right hand, where I think most of us wanted to get right away, is the grand total for the 6 buildings. And so I give that to you as the basically summary information of the projects that you have approved, and we will be starting construction as soon as possible in those buildings that have the tunnels. We can do some work before school's out, and that those that don't, we will get started in them as soon as possible. So that is a summary of total costs as we proceed with this project.
Thank you, Brock. Does Rick?
Quick question, Brock. When we look at the contingencies,
Is that going to be due to change orders primarily, or are we talking unforeseen situations that the bidders didn't recognize when they bid the project?
Members of the board, Rick, could be a little bit of both. We don't foresee that there will be many change orders. We feel like we've addressed all of that as we've gone through this. We've made some adjustments. As you recall, for example, there was an adjustment to Lewis and Clark in the manner in which we were going to put that in. So, you know, typically you might see that come through as a change order, which contingencies might cover, but we think we've covered all that. I would say it's really for any unforeseen things as we start to get into those buildings. For example, we've done asbestos abatement costs in each one of these buildings. But once you start taking out floor tile or ceiling tile, you might discover some additional things that would need to be abated, so there's some costs available for that. So it really would be more so for any unforeseen things that we haven't discovered, but I certainly, as I've done before, I want to take this opportunity, both in an answer to your question and to publicly express my appreciation for Jim Free and his team. Jim is with us, I believe, and also members of O&E. When the projects went out for bid, our team really, Jim's team really went out and went through these buildings with a fine-tooth comb with the engineer. And then once the first building came back and it was a little higher than we originally thought, they again went out and tried to make sure that they got contractors into those buildings. They looked at them inside and out to really try to account for everything that would be out there so there wouldn't be unforeseen expenses. So again, great appreciation for that effort, which I think will really help see this total be what you see here.
Robin?
What was the total amount originally that we agreed upon as a board?
Members of the board, Robin, at the December 10th meeting, the total proposal at that point was with construction and fees just over $12.3 million. That at the time did include a fee that was slightly higher than we ultimately negotiated, but we were just slightly above 12.2 when we finalized on those fees. So that would be the difference, what was approved on December 10th to what you see now.
Anyone else have any questions for Brock? Okay, thank you very much, Brock. We look forward to hearing when work actually starts and knowing that we're going to have a really hot fall and we're going to need those air-conditioned schools. Any other staff reports?
Nothing at this time.
Anything else, Brock? Anne Marie? Jeff? Okay. Consent agenda. Chris?
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. We are now at our business section. First item, award of bids for the Ed Clapp Elementary School project. Mr. Steen.
Thank you. Brock is handing out a summary we're just going to cover as part of the discussion. And there's been some questions with regard to the cost of construction for the Ed Clapp Elementary and how that compares to some other projects in the community. So we're going to talk about that a little bit when we get to that point. But first, perhaps, just to talk about the award of bids and put the action on the table so we have some discussion at that point. There are basically, we've all had a chance, I believe, to review the bid package. Their recommendation from administration recommends proceeding with the base bids for the project along with alternate 2, alternate 3, and alternate 6. The total bid award is about $13,139,000. In addition, there are some construction management fees of 3.5%, A&E fees of 6.5%, and a 2% contingency built in to the award here, as well as $850,000 for furniture, fixture, and equipment, technology, and direct costs associated with the project, and for a total of $15,642,878. So to put this on the table, I will or put this on the floor, I will make a motion to approve the base bid award for a new elementary school in the amount of $12,865,941.25, along with alternates 2 for $45,700, alternate 3 for $117,409, and alternate 6 for $109,918, together with construction management fees of 3.5%, A&E fees of 6.5%, construction contingency of 2%, and $850,000 for furniture, fixture, and equipment, technology district costs, for a total project award of $15,642,878.81, and direct administration to award contracts to all low bidders as identified in the attached bid summary.
Second.
Thank you. It's been seconded, so discussion. Rick?
Brock and I put together a little slide, actually 2 slides for us to take a look at with regard to just some analysis of the project and how it may compare. And this, we tried to address some of the questions that came up during the whole discussion process with looking at the project cost. We had our architect meet with us several times, or a couple of times, talking about the project and some of the unique differences or issues that deal with this project. So we want to talk about a few things there. And again, this is for discussion purposes. If we miss something, feel free to jump in or ask questions. When we take a look at the project costs for the Ed Clapp Elementary, including our alternates, it's basically $162.86 per square foot. When we take a look at that, there are some specific site costs related to that site for preparation. Those total $9.41 a square foot. That includes all the earthwork we had some discussion on about digging it all out and layering it back in an appropriate way to make sure we have a solid foundation for the building. The irrigation of the fields, the soccer fields for the park district is built into that as well. The replacement of the parking in the library area that we're going to disrupt and basically use. And also agreeing to replace and put a park storage, or park district storage and bathroom replacement. The total costs of those, Brock, I have that in front of me somewhere, but 700, 800,000, something like that.
Members of the board, Rick, when you do the calculation on that at $9.41 a square foot, it comes in just under $785,000 total. And in that, I also want to make sure you understand that this is our best estimate of what portion of each of those packages make up that square footage cost. For earthwork, for example, as you see on the bid tab, the total award is significantly higher. It's $929,000. In working with our construction manager, we tried to make our best estimate of what portion of that is extra because of this site versus if you were at another site. So I want you to understand it's an estimate by looking at each of the packages.
Okay, Robin?
Is it common to, when we figure out square foot cost, to include the sites in, I mean, I understand comparisons to other schools and different schools in the state, do they include the site prep?
What we did try to do on that, Robin, is we actually tried to make a comparison to the latest elementary school that was approved in West Fargo. And these adjustments really are trying to create an apples and apples comparison between what we know about the bid in West Fargo, which was just awarded last night, compared to the bid that we're looking at here tonight. And so what we made these adjustments knowing these were very specific, related to the fact that this is really our land cost for setting in on this site. And so when we take a look at the $153.45 a square foot, we actually made the best comparison we could, and we did deal with the business manager in West Fargo. And again, apples and apples, that cost per square foot is approximately $149.05 for the West Fargo project. So we're up basically about $4, almost $5 over, or $4 over that estimate. So I hope that answers your question. So when it's not common, because you've got all sorts of different costs associated with this project that are, specific, we consider them land costs or land acquisition costs, because we really didn't pay anything for the land except for, agreeing to do some of these things. And so the land acquisition cost is excluded from the West Fargo project cost as well. And so we tried to make that comparison. Brock, did you have something to add there?
Members of the board, Robin, I think the other thing that typically is not common, and I'm looking at Steve Gertz and Kevin Bartram, typically you also are looking at cost per square foot as a base bid award, is that correct? That's standard in the industry. We put in the alternates being recommended as well, because it's our belief as an administration and visiting with Rick about how to present this, that those are true costs that we are gonna have, and so generally you have base bid and then your alternates are separate, so your per square footage cost is strictly base bid, but we wanted to give you a full picture without any of those things having to be calculated separately.
Brock, that cost, the alternate's about a little over $3 a foot, is that correct, somewhere in that neighborhood?
That is correct.
John had a question?
Madam President, Rick, I'm gathering that we don't also have a rather significant cost for specials, because we're going into a neighborhood that's already built and developed versus building roads and waterways and drainages, and even though that's not on this sheet, we won't have that as much of a cost.
I know Brock has been dealing with the city on that, and I'll let Brock handle that, because I know there will be special assessments.
Yes, but
Members of the board, John, as a matter of fact, there will be special assessments that we have agreed as a district to cover as a part of this project, specifically relating to the development of 28th Street that will be put in from 32nd Avenue to 30th Avenue. And the arrangement that we are visiting with the city currently, certainly there's several members involved there. There's the Park District, so for the land that we will be developing, so there will be specials on that particular part of Ed Clapp Park for some of that development, getting some of the utilities and water, et cetera, to the site where we'll be putting the building. Then there will be the road as well, and so you're talking about the Park District, Bethel Church, the apartment complex that is there on the corner, right on the corner of 32nd and 27th. And so what the general arrangement is right now is the city of Fargo has agreed that they would cover all specials that would be assessed to Bethel in this project, provided that the school district would agree to cover that portion of specials that will be assessed to that apartment complex. So in relationship, given how much square footage is covered there, there will be less assessed to the apartment complex than there would be to Bethel, because you're talking about all of their parking lot area as well as in front of the church. So the city has agreed to do that. If we would agree to cover the cost of the specials for the apartment complex, then in the joint powers agreement that we would end up having with the Park District, we would also agree, the Park District will clear that land of all specials, and it'll be free and clear when the plating is done at the end of this, or when this project is completed, and then any specials associated with our portion of that land that the school sits on, we will assume for the Park District, because it's the portion we are building on. So there will be some specials there. We're working with the city in how we would get that addressed. And a reminder that we do have the special assessment levy that we zeroed out this year because we paid off all our specials in full. We'll need to visit about what the estimates are going forward of those costs, and then we'll address that at budget time in the appropriate year to cover those specials.
And Bethel's aware of that. They did endorse this project, their board.
Members of the board, Robin, yes, all members have approved the apartment complex. We've got a letter from them. We've got a joint powers agreement with them. Bethel has also, in a memorandum, as part of their agreement, they've agreed with the city as well as us, as has the Park District. And one other note, one of the reasons that the city is so involved with the Bethel piece is there is discussion at some point of maybe needing to put in 31st Avenue through the Bethel parking lot. At this time, that is not something that they're going to do, but the discussion is, should that be needed down the road for traffic flow purposes, both for Bethel's purpose and the city's. That's why they're involved with that project, and all parties have approved all the agreements at this point. This will be actually the development agreement. I was just at a PUPAC meeting of the city yesterday, and this will be at the city council for approval Monday night at their meeting.
Rick, would you like to continue?
Any further questions on just the kind of what we've presented so far? We do have another slide, which you all have in front of you, which is really kind of a comparison of I'll say it, Ed Clapp elementary square footage compared to the most recently approved elementary in West Fargo. But, well, if there's any questions on costs or per square foot cost, we can certainly address that.
I just want to clarify, what we did here is we pulled out the costs that were special to this project that didn't have anything to do with the building itself. It's all the land, agreement with the park district. And so when we compare just that square footage price to the most recent neighboring elementary school, we're within a few dollars square footage wise.
Correct. Yep.
Brock?
Members of the board, maybe Rick, if we want to go to the next slide,
Yep.
then that'll address both Chris's question and maybe some other questions that folks might have.
Yep.
for
And
slide
so
2.
if we go to the next slide.
Which one of you's in control of the next slide?
Right, and so what we did, because obviously we do have another comparable school going up with one of our neighbors, we wanted to take a look at, so we've got a cost per square foot that's very comparable with our neighboring district, but our school is a little bit different. It's built differently for different reasons. We've got certain conceptual reasons to go ahead and build the building in the fashion that we've designed it, and we'll talk about some of those differences and why. And so let's just start out with the comparison here. We've got the Fargo Ed Clapp at 83,500 square feet. That compares to the West Fargo Public School of 72,162. Technically or theoretically, those schools are built to house the same number of kids. There's in the Ed Clapp, it's a K through 5 building with 4 sections per class, and which would equate to basically 24 classrooms. In West Fargo, it's a 5-section building with 5 classes, so a 25 classroom building. Fargo does something a little bit different there that has an impact on the square footage. Fargo basically adds an extra classroom to accommodate any type of overflow or bubble class that might come through. And West Fargo actually does it the opposite way. They actually reduce their count by 1 classroom. And it's just an approach they take in building their building. So we've got, the end result there is we've really got 1 extra classroom in the building. In addition to that, I think most of us are aware of the fact that kindergarten rooms are significantly larger than your typical classroom. And Fargo will have 4 kindergarten rooms included in their project, whereas West Fargo has a kindergarten center and there are no kindergarten rooms in the West Fargo grade school. So we've got a fairly significant additional square footage just due to the kindergarten rooms, about 1,200 square feet in total there. Our classrooms are typically designed to be a little bit bigger than the ones we're seeing at the West Fargo project. And these are pretty standard with our new building construction. Kennedy would be the most recent one. And so our grades 1 through 5 are approximately 100 square feet larger than the comparable in West Fargo. In addition, Fargo is putting in 2 music rooms, and so we don't have music on a cart, and basically that allows the kids to go to actual music room to practice their art. We also included 1 art room, so we don't have art on the cart as well, and that's different than what West Fargo does. And then there's 3 team centers built into this project throughout the building, and the West Fargo School does not have team centers. And that's a fair amount of square feet, I think 42 or 4,800 square feet additional, something like that, so it's a fair amount of additional square feet there. And then we do have slightly wider corridors, adding square footage to the building. And so when we take those differences there, we really do account for the most, if not all, of the square footage differences in the building. And so we build our building a little bit differently. I think it's been deemed, we're looking forward 50 years and what is needed for what we think is needed for the education process for the next 50 years. And I think, between Dr. Schatz or whoever might want to comment on the music rooms, the art room, and the team centers, why we're actually doing that.
Slide back. Well, as we had talked about in our long-range facility planning process, that one of the things with the overcrowding in our schools was the lack of ancillary spaces for programs that we need to conduct, and art on the cart, music in the rooms, those types of things were all concerns. And so those things were addressed in this building as we move forward, and as I suspect we would do in the future. As we move students to appropriately enroll our buildings, we will provide spaces then again in those buildings that were being used for classroom space, which should have been used for maybe art or music and those types of things. So by doing this, we'll be recalibrating the use of our buildings and provide a standard base of education for students across the district that is similar no matter which building they go in. So I think it's a good move for the district and provides us a blueprint for the future if we indeed have to build another elementary school. So that's the reason behind it, and when you look at the cost comparisons, we have more square footage, but yet the cost per square foot is pretty close. So I think that's important to remember.
Rusty?
Just a quick question, maybe for Kevin or Steve. Of the 11,000 square feet, how much of that is classroom space and how much is common area space?
If you wouldn't mind stepping to the microphone, so.
The square footages are, there really isn't any common area factored into that, the square footages that are up there. The team centers were 4,800 square feet by themselves. The kindergarten rooms, 300 square feet each for another 1,200, so we're up to 6,000 square feet, and then about 2,500 for the classrooms. So that's about 8,500 square feet just for those, plus then adding in music rooms and things like that. So there might have been a little bit more corridor space to serve those extra rooms, but that wasn't factored in.
Robin?
I have a comment. As far as building our schools, I think it's, of course, we need to take the low bid for legal purposes, but I also think it's a very important message to send that we build quality schools that aren't going to be here for 20 years. They're going to be here for 70, 80. We have some schools that are 100 years old. We need to build them quality. I would rather sacrifice that as a board member right now and do it right for the future. I support this motion, and I'll be voting in favor of it.
Chris?
I have a question about terrazzo flooring. And my question is, speaking to Robin's point, some of our schools have in fact been around. I wonder if Jim Free or Brock knows what kind of flooring is in Clara Barton, for instance. Anybody know how old that building is off the top of their head? Someone explain the value in terrazzo flooring, because I think about our own homes, you know, for a while Corian countertops was the thing to have, and it's really not any better than lots of other things. It just was the thing at the time. And I know we put terrazzo flooring in Davies, and is it necessary? I don't want to nitpick, but I'm just curious.
Members of the board, Chris, I will attempt to start this answer, and if the experts want to weigh in, they certainly can. And you touched on some of it, I think, in your question. Some of it is kind of the standard at the time is part of it. And when we talk about terrazzo flooring, and we did talk a great deal about this, and you might see on the bid tab, there actually were 3 alternates for terrazzo, and we made a decision that we would forego that in certain areas, but we would keep it in other areas. And to a certain degree, it's about kind of the long-term maintenance and upkeep and sustainability of that structure and of those floors. And much like I would compare the difference between the tile and, you know, the tile of that era is the terrazzo of this era. And I actually had this same conversation, not only about terrazzo flooring, but about burnished block. We had that same conversation. Should we do it? Shouldn't we do it? Why or why not? And I believe it laminate tile, is that what you called it, Steve? The glazed block of the day in some of our older buildings is the burnished block of today. And so some of it is kind of what is the construction material of preference and quality for sustainability of the time, and that's really the reason for the long-term sustainability of that. So I believe that is why we recommend that we go in that direction.
I would just add a couple of comments to that. I'm not familiar with all the schools in the district, but Agassiz School has terrazzo in its original building, which was 1914, and that's still in its current state. And to my knowledge is unchanged. But I think the point that Brock made, the terrazzo that's being suggested as an alternate right now is in the commons area, the main entry, where the majority of the traffic in and around the school will happen all day, every day. One of the primary exits to the playground area is also in that area. And in terms of cleaning and maintenance, no waxing, no stripping wax, no nothing. It's about as foolproof as it can be in terms of maintenance, and it's in the highest area of maintenance in the building. The other building that I'm familiar with is Bennett School, and I went into Bennett School to visit with the music teacher that was here tonight as part of the design for this project. And it had been a while since I had been in Bennett, and Bennett must be approaching 15 years old or more, and the terrazzo in there looks absolutely brand new. And I would venture to say that there's been some flooring in other areas of that building that's already been replaced just from normal wear and tear, whereas the main circulation space in that building looks absolutely brand new, and that's burnished block and terrazzo. But it's in specific areas. It's hard to justify it throughout the entire building, so it's in an area where it would do the most good.
Thank you.
John?
Madam President, Brock and Rick, a question and perhaps a comment to follow. The question is, when did West Fargo bid the school numbers that you're talking about?
They just awarded the bids last night.
Last night, and so we're in the same time frame. The question, I'll continue the question. What's our best sense of what we have coming down the road as far as tightness of the ability to, the tightness of bidding and costs increases with the boom happening in North Dakota, with the huge project going on with Sanford? Could you help apprise us of what we see coming down the pike and the advantages of doing these bids now?
Members of the board, John, again, I will speak to what I know based on the individuals I have visited with, and Kevin and Steve certainly might have some additional thoughts for you, but certainly I think that if you look at the cost per square foot, both for us and for West Fargo, we're starting to see those costs creep up right now as opposed to some of the buildings that we've built previously. And so I think all the advice we've gotten in all the recent bids we've done, both the HVAC and this project, there's a real significance in bidding now and being in the market this year as opposed to some of the major projects that you're talking about that are going to happen in this area next year and maybe in subsequent years. So certainly, we're starting to see the cost of construction increase, and how much will that increase going forward? It is anybody's guess, but certainly it's a certain amount of supply and demand based on the types of projects that are happening. So I think we are in the market at the best possible time. That being said, the cost per square foot is certainly higher today than it was in prior years, and that's just the nature of a growing market.
I can give you a comparison, John. Watford City is building a brand-new high school, and right now that high school is half the square footage of Davies High School, and the per square foot is about 240. And their bids came in at about 240. They're looking to spend about as much money as we spent on Davies. The costs out west are extremely high, and all the information that I've been given and been able to ascertain on where we are in the future is they're going to continue to go up. So we are right on the cusp of the bubble, if you will, of what they call the Bakken premium. And I've been told that that is continually to creep to the east. And I think anybody you talk to would tell you that. The other thing, too, is workforce and finding enough people to do the work. That's becoming a major, major issue for contractors. And so I think we are right at the right time to get this going and get it done. Otherwise, we're going to run into several possible issues.
Anyone else with any? John?
If I might continue, Madam President, just to get a sense of the bigger picture as well. There are advantages, I believe, I understand, for bidding today as well relative to the economic environment. And we have affordable interest rates. We have the potential of loan construction funds potentially from the state. And Could you just kind of give us a sense, if you would, of that picture and help remind us, or help us all see clearly the benefits of doing that now and some of the risks of maybe kicking that can down the road and not having as beneficial interest rates and so on?
Members of the board, John, as we talk about financing moving forward, and we're going to discuss this in more detail on Friday at the planning committee meeting, but a week ago, Tuesday, we did have Myron Knutson, bond consultant, come in and visit with us about options for financing. And certainly right now, refresh my memory, Rick, low 3% for bond, long-term bond financing, is that correct?
2 to 3, I believe.
Yeah, in the 2 to 3% range. So very favorable conditions for bond financing right now. And then the state loan construction program, when it has money in it and there are loans available, have been in the low 1%, just over 1%. And so currently, there are $33 million in requests for state loan construction laying in wait, 4 projects, and then ours is also out there, 4 besides ours. And certainly, we'd have to wait until the legislature meets to determine if they're going to appropriate dollars for that program. But we're in a situation where we've got some options available to maybe do some interim financing until we can bridge the gap to get to the state loan construction. The potential risks there is certainly what happens in the market. And those of you that are familiar with the financial side of what happens in the markets, you're always at that risk depending on when you finance. And you always run the risk of saying if we'd have waited, we couldn't have gotten a better rate, or if we'd have just taken it then, we would have got it before it went up. I mean, it's hard to know. But right now is a very favorable time, both for bond financing and if the state loan construction comes in the next legislative session, which will start in January of 15. Our goal is to try to maximize all of that borrowing potential and the best interest rates available to protect the long-term interests of the district. And we'll make those decisions, or at least review those options and make some recommendations at Planning Committee on Friday. And we'll be, I believe, talking about that in more detail next Monday at our next board meeting as far as when's the right time to issue bonds, to move forward with these projects, things of that nature. So very favorable time and more to come in the next week to 10 days as far as some decisions.
Okay, anyone else? In that case,
Madam President, are you calling for the motion momentarily to vote?
that was the plan.
I might just one last time continue. The process we've all gone through in the last few years since we brought on our new superintendent, since we embarked upon a long-range facilities plan, since we engaged the public, since we listened as best we could to the vision of the people and other leaders in the community with the Go 2030 plan and so on, the relative risks, some would say, in embracing the concepts of neighborhood schools, investing in those neighborhood schools for all the right reasons, the upgrading with HVACs, the realization of the growth we're going through as a community in South Fargo. I think this is a moment to celebrate in our community. Some look at what we're going through as problems, what we have are opportunities, and we're addressing our growth challenges with the best we can, and for the best future for every student in our district. And I'd be remiss not to acknowledge the heart and the work and the rigor of everybody at every level, stakeholders from our own table all the way down to the community levels, and their continued engagement with us and embracing of our vision. So I'm just so thrilled, and I'm a fiscal conservative, flaming liberal guy. This is the kind of stuff, though, that's the decisions that will carry forward for generations. And to infill an elementary school in a quality section of town that deserved it, and to not be jostling those kids around generation or school to school to school, and treating them in that fashion where they didn't know their future. I just think that this is such a significant place we're at and have arrived at. And we all got there together. So I congratulate everybody from our management team to our staff at every level, to the community especially, for their involvement and faith in us getting through this process and coming out with a victory.
With that, we have a motion on the table to approve the awards for the elementary school construction at Ed Clapp Park as presented. All those in favor?
Roll.
Oh, roll, please.
Johnson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Papacek,
Yes.
Steen,
Yes.
Strand,
Yes.
Wallman,
Yes.
Goldenberg.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brock and Rick, for the additional explanation today. I think that was helpful for everyone. We're now at the superintendent evaluation. As you all know, we do this periodically. Thank you, everyone, for getting your comments in a timely manner to Anne Marie so that we could put this report together. We are a unanimous board. Find our superintendent's performance satisfactory. No, don't think any of us had any concerns that it wouldn't be that way. But I would like to entertain a motion at this time. Robin?
I move that we, the March 11th, 2014 superintendent evaluation be accepted and filed.
Second.
Thank you. It's moved and seconded. Now is an opportunity for discussion. I'd just like to say on behalf of the board that we are very pleased with your performance, as you can read by the comments that everyone has given you. Does anyone else have an additional comment before I ask Dr. Schatz if he has a comment? Oh, I guess we better approve it before we let him talk. But does anyone else have any other comments? Oh, I beg your pardon, sorry.
I just want to say that I've never witnessed so closely somebody who has had to put out so many fires, had to deal with so many really challenging situations since you began working with poise and integrity, and I would just like to thank you for your leadership.
Anyone else? In that case, I would like to put the motion on the table for vote, and then we will offer Dr. Schatz an opportunity to respond. All those in favor of accepting the report evaluation as written, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. Dr. Schatz, would you care to say a few words?
It's always a humbling moment, and would just like to thank the board for your continued support. We have done a lot of work in the last 2 years, well, a year and 7 months, really. And I think we're in the right place. I think, John, you did a nice job of summarizing where we're at. And the one thing I've appreciated is that we've been able to have very rich discussions. We've been able to have very long discussions sometimes, but we do always find that common ground. And I think that in working with this board has been one of the things that I've enjoyed the most. And so I appreciate, again, the support, and we will keep trying to do our best. So thank you.
Thank you, and as the person who's gotten to sit next to you for the last few months, thank you especially. It's been a pleasure. So onward and upward. Last but not least, in our business section, BSR 1 through 5 monitoring. I would, Jim?
I move we accept the report. Move we accept the report identified as Memo 103 on BSR relationship policies.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Everyone who responded the same. Nothing unusual here. Is there anyone that wishes to add any additional comments in the discussion phase? In that case, all those in favor of accepting the report as written, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passed. We have now reached the point where the board will go into executive session, so we will take a break for 10 minutes. Unfortunately, media and other general public are not allowed to stay for our executive session, but if you would like to excuse yourselves when our executive session is over, we'll be more than happy to invite you back in. No, that's exactly why we're going into it, I was about to say, into executive session to consult with our attorney about potential litigation as permitted under NDCC 4404 19.1. You're welcome. Did you put us on break? Yes. Yes, 10 minutes. Thank you. Down to board reports, committee and liaison reports. We'll start with Jim.
GAC committee will be meeting later this month, and I want to thank you on behalf of GAC committee for all of you that reached out to area legislators. We're going to be plotting and planning our next reason to contact them, which will probably be something you'll be hearing from us sometime in the next month or so. I did meet with the Jefferson PTA since our last meeting, mostly to go over the mill levy vote that we've been doing with all the PTAs. And I have one state school board thing to get you aware of. I don't know if you have been able to go into the NSBA resolutions website or not. I'm not certain if everybody has access to that that's signed up to go to the conference. But the resolutions that the delegate assembly are going to be discussing and taking action on are already out there. I actually got a big thick book shipped to my house so I could study it in advance. And there was actually a interface web page created for any delegates to ask any clarification questions. I just want you to be aware of the fact that I did express concern over one resolution that's coming forward. Not because I'm against the premise, but I'm against the philosophy behind what's going to occur here. The Council of Urban Schools is putting forth a resolution for our national association to ask Congress to provide us with a federal mandate that all public school buildings and school property and school events be tobacco-free, which sounds really good. But of course, we really don't need a federal law to do that. We already have done that right here in little old Fargo, North Dakota. And to the best of what they've been able to research for me, there is no restriction that stops any other school district or state school system from making their properties and their events tobacco-free. So I've asked the Council of Urban School Boards, they have their own little group, to give me their rationale for why we should ask for a federal mandate, something that we normally, as a philosophy, as a group, say no to. The answer I got back, and I believe this is from somebody in Cleveland, but I could be wrong, it could be a suburb of Cleveland, is their particular school board didn't have the ability to pass this because too many of their board people were tobacco users. So that's what prompted asking for a federal law so they can override whatever happened in their local school board. So I am, at this point in time, advocating that we do not pass that resolution because I don't understand why we'd be asking for a federal mandate on something we control already.
Thank you. Linda, you had a question for Jim.
I do. Is there any way between now and then, and maybe this is what you're working on, that they could get this withdrawn?
I don't believe it can get withdrawn until we are at the delegate assembly, and then it can get killed rapidly or discussed and acted upon. Because it's there, and it will be part of the agenda of the business of the assembly that day. And that's it.
Thank you. John?
Nothing, Madam President.
Rick?
Planning had a meeting on March 4th, and at that meeting, we had Brad Wimmer as a guest, and he talked to our group about possibility of opening up some of the gated property at CBE as a starter with regard to public use of school property. We said we'd probably discuss that further at some point. We also had a guest with us, Myron Knutson, and to kind of introduce us to some of the financing options that may be available to us when we make a final determination on the HVAC and the Ed Clapp Elementary, which we're going to follow up with on Friday. We have one topic meeting, I believe, on this Friday for planning, and that's going to talk about financing options going forward for the two major projects that we have. And we did our budget comparison, our quarterly budget comparison with regard to any significant variances on the budget. And here's a couple of small items that we're going to have to address, but no major significant budget variances at this point. And that was pretty much the gist of the meeting on the 4th, and we do have, again, a meeting at 7:30, I believe, on Friday.
Chris?
Oh, no, I do have one more item. We have, John, I'll give John all the credit, we have lined up our meeting at Woodrow for Thursday. So
Hey.
we're gonna take care of that.
Thank you. Chris? Linda? Robin?
Communications was supposed to meet on Thursday, but through discussing this here, I found out that it's just going to be Dinah and myself, so we are going to postpone that, and we will follow up with a future date. However, let's see here, at the next meeting, Anne Marie will be sharing a recap of all of the engagements that the board members took place in or were invited to. I want to, thank everybody for all the participation in media requests. We did not say no to anybody that asked to interview us, whether they were friendly or not so friendly audiences. And I think that needs to be stated publicly. Thank you for your willingness to get out there and field all the questions. It's been a lot of work, and we'll keep working on it. So every PTA, I just completed McKinley the other night, so now I believe every PTA was reached as well. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, I guess that's me now. President's report, if you want to pass these out. In addition to what you see there, today I asked Jim Free to take me for a little tour of the warehouse building that we have back there. I'm not sure how many, if any of you have ever been back there, but in light of the fact that the city is going to demolish the building and that we have to relocate those services, I thought it was quite interesting to see what it actually is that we have back there. Jim would be willing to take any one of you on a quick tour. It only takes about 20 minutes to walk through there, but it's quite impressive, and not only just the kitchen facilities, but all of the other things. And I think it might be helpful when we get to the point of having to talk about what our options are in terms of relocating and what the space really means for people to have a little bit more of an understanding of what that is, because we're all a little more familiar with schools and what they look like and what needs to go into schools. But I think as potential discussion items come forth from our administration about what might be possible recommendations of what we do with the warehouse, it would be helpful for people to have an understanding of actually what we're talking about. So just get in touch with Jim if you would like that opportunity. You can do it on a night prior to a board meeting if you're interested. Anne Marie had sent out a request to all of you to express your interest in graduation assignments. I just got all of that today, but not in time to get it ready for the board meeting, but I'll have that next Monday when we have our next board meeting. And I also wanted to say thank you to all of you, sort of reiterate a little bit of what Robin said. It's been a hectic few weeks, couple of months. I think we put our best feet forward to do our best to educate our public about the mill levy vote happening today. I hope we had a good turnout. We'll see in a few hours or less what the results are. But I just wanted to thank everybody for all of the time and extra effort, and especially to Robin and the communications team for preparing the documents and so on, so that we were able to present our case to the best of our ability. So thank you to everyone. And you wanted to add something to that, John?
Madam President, I have a question to maybe refer to you as president or to governance, but there's quite a lively debate now going on with regard to where there will be a future performing arts center or a future cultural center, or whether they'll add on to the Fargo Dome or move something downtown. And some people even say West Fargo, West Acres. But my point is this is, and I'm not saying I agree or disagree, but our designated representative is very in the public eye. And I don't know if our board ever discusses issues that our appointed, our delegates, representatives to the Fargo Dome Authority, or if they represent the board or not, or it's just a topic that I think we should at some point be prepared to broach in the appropriate setting.
Rick, but you had a...
Yep, and maybe, and someone can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I don't think that the person that we suggest to be on the board of the Dome represents the school district. We're asked to make some recommendations. That's really the connection, the way I understand it. And if I'm wrong, someone can tell me. But so there's really no liaison piece there, John. It's just we make a recommendation and that's what happens.
And
That's the way I understand it.
Yeah, and our person is, you know, supposed to represent the whole community too, not only the interests of the school district, just like we are supposed to, you know, represent the interests of all of the students in our district, not just the ones that happen to live in our neighborhood. Jim, you have more experience of that. Is Rick's assessment correct of that?
Yes, I believe Rick is spot on. We are a recommending body that makes a recommendation to the city commission, and Deb Mathern is actually a city commission appointee to the Fargo Dome Authority. That being said, I certainly don't think it hurts at some point in time if the district has a position for whatever reasons, that we could engage Deb. I'm sure she'd be happy to come and listen. And
Jim,
Yeah.
yeah, she is appointed to the Fargo Dome Authority by the city commission. We make a recommendation to the city commission. So they are all appointed by the city commission.
Rick?
and Jim, I don't disagree one bit. I think if we're going to do something like that, it would probably be wise to probably try to contact as many of the Dome Authority members as possible, not just one that we suggest for being on the Dome. Yeah.
Well, we can put that on as a possible discussion topic at governance to decide if it's something that we as a board want to take up in discussion and come up with a possible opinion. One other thing I wanted to mention too, which is on the bottom here, just a reminder that the info session that we're attempting for the first time to have prior to deadline for election filing is April 1st. In the past, it's been hosted by generally the board president and some committee chairs who may or may, whoever's available. So I'm putting out a request. If anyone is available and wants to participate, if you let me know, then we can discuss how we would handle that. I know that you get asked to do a whole lot of extra stuff, and I totally understand, and I'm the one that pushed for this to be before the election, so I'm fully happy to handle it, but if there's anyone else who is interested, just let me know and we'll plan accordingly. I think that's it. If anybody has any questions or anything else that we missed, is there anything else, John? Nothing tonight? Anybody else? Oh, well, first, I was going to say that the next regular meeting is March 17th. It's Monday, less than a week from today. remember we had to do some adjusting, so please don't forget that it's Monday. And debriefing, yes, Robin has.
I didn't know when was the appropriate time to bring this up, but since the air conditioning discussion did come up tonight, as the Youth Commission Executive Director, I had to scramble to find space because Lewis and Clark is one of our schools. I had to scramble. You guys, our schools are used. I can't imagine too many rooms are unused throughout the summer. So it really became very clear to me that our schools are used by our community throughout the summer as well as the district. And the district is very friendly to community partners in using their space. And so I think it's a good thing that we are moving forward with this air conditioning for many reasons.
Chris?
Want to especially thank Jim and Robin for going above and beyond, meeting with PTAs, everyone who asked you showed up and tried your best to educate the public about the figures that we're looking at and the impact of a yes and a no vote. So thank you so much for taking your time to do that.
Anyone else?
I'll second that. You did a
Oh,
great job.
I kind of said it already too, so I think it's a unanimous thank you to everyone. Linda, did you want?
This is official, and it's only tangentially related to our work, but if you want to see more students perform, the symphony concerts this weekend have a side-by-side with the FM area youth symphonies. So there'll be 2 full orchestras on the stage, and all the students will be sitting side-by-side with an orchestra person for one of the pieces. And
Great. Well, thank you. Okay, this meeting is adjourned.